So it's been a long time coming, but here we are finally with our AOE DPS arena guide.
We are going to show you 5 of the best meta teams to help you reach Apex Overlord.
But before we get into the nitty gritty, I just first want to say that this is on the test server. Also that if you're wondering where the numbers on the right side of the screen come from, look at this video right here to get an explanation. Alright, so I would say that this is my favorite of all of these setups that I'm going to show you guys. Mostly because I'd say it's the most free-to-play friendly. That being said though, it does have some glaring problems. One of the most obvious ones being that the first round you really have to sacrifice. You're gonna lose a lot of health in the first round, but it sets you up pretty well. The second problem is that it relies on arrogance, and arrogance is great, but arrogance, you cannot control his ult, and so it makes this setup a lot less consistent. Something that's nice about this though is that if you don't have Tordor, just like on my main account, you can use Wrath instead if you have Lunacy Visor. Other than putting the Bastion Ring on Tordor, there aren't really any other required gear sets or artifacts for this to work. But a quick tip about using Hatsut's ult, because of her lack of range, I would just use it to clear off the end of waves.
You're not going to be able to punch up very high with this team, mostly because of a flaw that happens with Cerberus in the second round. If only one of those little spidery things goes by, you'll lose. So you gotta make sure to have a very good Cerberus. So another flaw of this comp is that you have to wait for the enemies to leave their spawn and come all the way up to you. So a third problem of this comp is that in the later rounds, Hatsut might die during her ult because of the exploding enemies. A good thing about this comp is that you can replace the Somi with another healer, a more common healer like Eloin. Just make sure to place her in a position where she doesn't heal Ardia. When it comes to Cerberus, you can definitely use Lunacy Visor, but if you don't want to, you can definitely put another artifact that increases damage for him. In this video, we're not gonna go into the specifics of the gear for each character because we're on the test server and the gear isn't the best anyway. But if you want to know more about which gear you should use, you can click on leaderboard and you'll find the top players, and there you'll be able to see exactly what gear they use.
I would say that this is the most common team you'll encounter in Apex Overlord. It's a pretty good team, but it has a few flaws, the most blatant being its first round you're going to take a lot of damage. Another problem it has is since it's relying on Ardea, the unreliability of her ult will really screw you over sometimes. Not only that, but most of the heroes are very hard to get, even though none of them have over 1 awakening. A few things to keep in mind. Every time you use Valkyrie's ult, you want to make sure that she has a shield of some kind on her, because the larger the shield, the more damage she will do. That being said, you can't do it every time, so it's not a requirement. That being said, I have seen a lot of people in Apex Overlord using Frigid Flame as an artifact for Valkyrie. I would actually highly recommend that you use Eye of Sin instead, since she will be getting hit often, and it just makes more sense to have a constant damage boost. A real running theme with all these teams though is that Ardea completely carries the entire team.
The only difference between this comp and the one before is that we swapped Cerberus with Hatsut. Hatsut is very good for clearing the very first round, but when it comes to the second, she takes a lifetime. So because of that, you're gonna start with a very big health disadvantage. So another disadvantage for this team is that you really need a chaotic healer to make this work. So a big disadvantage of the previous comp is that you often have to wait for Valkyria to clear her side of the map, as she doesn't do as much damage as Ardea does. That's why we swapped Cerberus with Hatsut, as she's able to help Valkyria quite a bit. If you don't have the Somi, an alternative that we would recommend is Gwendolyn. because she's able to give shields exactly like the Somi would, but she's not gonna heal Ardia as much as Vortex would. And even though Elgar may seem like he's sitting in the back doing nothing, just remember that his ultimate gives an incredible amount of extra damage to his faction team members. That being said, don't worry too much about the gear that you put on him, because he's not gonna do any damage anyway.
This is by far the wildest and most consistent of all of the setups. That's mostly because after you use Nyx's ult once, you're gonna hit that automatic ult button. And there's a really important reason why. Since you often rely on Nyx's ult lasting more than one round, you're gonna have a consistency problem, because if somebody that you're facing takes longer to finish that round, your Nyx ult will end. But if you hit that auto ult button, Nyx will ult the moment she gets her ult. But there are a few significant downsides. First of them being, you need ideally an A5 Nyx. You can get away with having an A3 Nyx, but you definitely cannot use an A1 Nyx. Trust me, I've tried. The thing too is that if you want, you can swap in Eloin for Dasami to add a bit more consistency with the ult of Nyx. I'm trying to adjust it, Pepper, don't worry. Alright. We hope you guys enjoyed this video, because we spent a lot of time putting it together. So we'd really appreciate it if you guys would leave a like and subscribe.
Also, a big shout out to Runan on Discord, who helped us come up with these strategies in the first place.
Alright. All that being said, hope you guys have a good one, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.